Hello, this is your host Akhil Navluri, and welcome to the very second episode of the One-to-One podcast episode series. In this podcast episode, I'm super thrilled and honored to be collaborating with the director of the Jetlag Guy firm, Dr. Stephen Jasper, who happens to be a very known person, coming from the jet lag space and also having a huge experience from the pharmaceutical space as well. So my rendezvous with Dr. Stephen happens to, go through through the Toastmasters event where we just, collaborated and spoke a lot about. And I was really impressed, by the speech that Dr. Stephen gave, and also we can talk about that as we head on with our podcast session in the coming. So Stephen, it gives me an absolute and super pleasure to welcome you to this this podcast episode of mine. So Stephen, how are you doing, and how are things in Melbourne, and how are things with respect to your Toastmasters event going on?
Look, Melbourne's lovely. It is springtime. It is the end of spring coming in towards summer here. And unfortunately, I've got plane trees that are shedding seed coats. If you've got plane trees over where you are, you'll understand. So if you hear me coughing or sniffling, I'm not sick. It's not COVID or anything. It's just pollens and allergy. But otherwise, we're pretty good. Toastmasters, we had a great meeting the other night. I gave a speech unexpectedly. Well, I put up my hand for one. So lesson learned, have a speech in your back pocket ready to go. And if there's a vacancy, go, yep, I'll do one.
Right. That's perfect.
So that's what I'm doing. So things are going well here. And sorry, I'm sipping hot chocolate here again to soothe the throat because of the pollen.
Feel free, this is an amazing podcast collaboration, and the best part about having a podcast is always to keep the conversation candid. So it's just like two friends having a chat about a particular specific thing. So Stephen, listeners, before we dig deep into our podcast session, I had the pleasure of hearing a speech of Stephen, and he just blew me away with the one with the one he gave on, especially. And the best part was he was the first person to start the speech, and everything was so natural what Stephen was talking about, and especially about jet lag. And I was like, wow, seriously, I was like, superb. I mean, I need to take some inspiration from Dr. Stephen on these particular aspects. And yes, I think probably I'll get the inspiration as we have a huge conversation in this podcast session. So Dr. Stephen, without any further ado, let's kick off with our podcast episode. All right. So, Dr. Stephen, would you like to, talk about your current line of work to our listeners?
My current line of work, I am a jet lag consultant. So I basically invented my own profession, and I work with typically business travelers. The sports travelers, they're pretty well looked after. They have team doctors who really guide them and what have you, and they're very much looked after. Elite athletes know how to be looked after. And I think we need to treat our business travelers as well as we treat elite athletes. I think that's important. And we don't. So I've developed an app. I've written some books. I've got a children's book, a children's colouring in book. And I'll be launching I've got one-on-one coaching available, workshops, and I'll be launching subscription programs as well.
All right.
Next year. So that's what I do, and that keeps me busy.
That's fantastic, Stephen. I mean, that's a pretty interesting one. Now, Stephen, when did you get this particular ideology, or let's say this thought that there is a difference between the business travelers and with the sports travelers when it comes to jet lag? Like when was that first moment like for you, the light bulb moment?
It's not that they're different. They're not different. They all have to perform at their peak. I think the difference with sports travel is the difference between gold and silver medals can be in like milliseconds.
Okay.
Business travelers can be a little bit off, but sports elite athletes cannot be. And I published a paper a few years ago where I talked about Olympic medal counts and jet lag, and I actually crunched the data from 1960 when people started flying. People started flying sort of in the late 60s. Early 60s. People started, flying became habitual because of the very first Olympic Games, the modern version. Of course, people went everywhere by boat.
Yep.
And there's no such thing as boat lag. And what I found is that as you travel further in terms of time zones, your chances of getting a gold medal decrease, but your
Okay.
chance of getting a silver medal actually increase,
Mhm.
because you get all these great athletes who just miss out by a fraction. So that's the sports travelers we know about. But sports travelers, as I said, get looked after. Business travelers do not. And that was my own experience when I was traveling for business. Here's your plane ticket, off you go, best of luck.
All
And
right.
that was a different experience.
That's pretty interesting, but I really feel that there's a contradiction when I'm thinking about this. Since you told me that sports travelers are looked after and business travelers are not, then in that
Mm.
case the sports travelers will not have any kind of an issue with respect to the jet lag, right? Because they have a particular team that's assigned to them. So
Well, hold on there. Let me just backtrack a bit. It also depends at the level. It depends on the popularity of the sport.
okay,
For example, Michael Phelps, who won 8 gold medals in swimming, when he went to compete in Rio, he went there weeks ahead. He had his own dedicated swimming pool.
okay,
He was looked after. But if you're the ribbon twirling girl from Bulgaria, you're not going to get the same level of treatment. There are some sports that are more prominent, prestigious than others. And of course, and I only looked at the Olympic Games, but as you'd be aware, in the South Continent, the Olympic Games aren't such a big deal because it's cricket.
Mm.
It's all about
Yes,
cricket, which is fine. And I could do the same with cricket matches,
yes,
travel to the West Indies or Australia or the UK or India, Pakistan, Sri
yep,
Lanka. There would be something there, but I just had such a big body of data with the Olympics.
absolutely.
So there are, you know, constraints, but generally speaking, elite sports, I'm not talking about amateurs, but elite tend to get looked after.
That's absolutely right. That actually gives me an idea on the point which I was just having a question on. Now, Stephen, now since this is the Ashes season and England has traveled like miles or let's say kilometers away, to come all the way to Australia, do you think the England cricket team is having some kind of a jet lag in the start? And how do they overcome that?
They would absolutely be having jet lag, but they would absolutely be prepared for it.
Okay.
And part of the benefit here in Australia, we're coming into summer. They'll be playing
Okay.
in the summertime,
Yep.
lots of sunshine. And look, honestly, sunshine is the best cure for jet lag.
That is
It
there. Yep.
really is. Because our bodies, we have a circadian rhythm, our body clock.
Yep.
It doesn't run exactly to 24 hours. None of us do. We tend to run a bit faster, a bit slow. That's how you get morning people and evening people. It's your body clock. And the sun recalibrates our body clock. We have special receptors in the eyes. They recalibrate the body clock with the frequency, especially in the blues and the greens areas of the spectrum.
Indeed, indeed. That is a good clear idea on that. Now, Stephen, you just were talking about that, that next year you're going to provide some kind of a subscription, and that's going to come very soon. Now, before that, Stephen, I'm pretty much interested to know, like in depth, would you like to talk about the services that you currently provide?
Okay, the services are designed for every price point because capture the market. So the cheapest is an app. I've got an ebook as well as the book. So this is the first book I've got in jet lag. So that's up on
Okay.
Amazon now.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and it's all backed with scientific, I haven't made that up. I've written a children's book about jet lag.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
basically it's about a little boy who lives in Sydney and he flies to London to visit his grandparents. And
Okay.
everything's topsy-turvy. He's awake during the night and sleepy during the day. And he explains jet lag in terms that children
Oh,
can understand. I've got a colouring in version of this book, the same thing, so that it reinforces the book and you can give it to children on a long flight.
okay.
Project Sunrise will be doing direct flights from Sydney and Melbourne to London and New York. It's about 22 hours of flying. And if you're traveling with small children on a 22-hour flight, you need something for them to do. So the colouring in book can help.
Okay. That's pretty interesting.
That's
I mean,
one.
this is the first time where I've heard about, someone actually writing a jet lag book for children. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much new to
I've
know.
got a free jet lag bookmark. So
Okay.
with tips to beat jet lag. So that's a freebie. I've got workshops. I do one-on-one consulting. This is typically CEOs or C-suite people. I do sell on my site the retimer glasses. Now,
Oh,
these are an Australian invention,
fantastic.
and
Okay.
the light is very deliberate. It's a bluish green color. And I've interviewed the inventor. They were invented in Australia. They were made in Australia. So I've got to wave my little Australian flag there. But
Yeah.
they're an Australian invention and they're manufactured here in Adelaide. They are.
Okay.
And but I talked about the eyes being receptive to sunlight. It's particularly in the blues and green wavelengths. The inventor said to me when he first tried them, because they didn't know about the different wavelengths, they just used amber because amber was the brightest color that they had at that time in LED lights. And the amber lights did nothing. Then they said, oh, well, let's try all the different colors. And there are only 5 different colors available at the time: red, amber, green, this bluish green, and a deep blue. And the blue and the deep blue were the best. So that's why we use these. So it's different.
Right.
And we're launching a subscription service next year. So it's like a club, and I'll have premium YouTube, meeting rooms with a password, all that sort of thing. So that will be for the hardcore business travelers. So that's what I'm offering at this point. It's basically the one-stop shop for jet lag. It's to end jet lag. It's to minimize the impact as you absolutely can. And I've lived this. I've known this. I'm certainly passionate about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I just love the word where you told it's like the one-stop shop for jet lag, which actually, caught my attention. Now, I mean, as we track a little bit back towards our conversation, or let's say circling back to our previous conversation, you just told me that, you even provide, one-on-one consulting services for the C-suite people and, for the CEOs. Now, when they come to you, Stephen, like what are the issues, or let's say, what are the queries that they come across to you with? Like, do they talk about, I'm having jet lag, how do I reduce that? Or is that something a little bit, or let's say advanced or deep when they ask the queries?
At the one-on-one level, I'd go through their diary. It's like, okay, you're flying to Hong Kong. Which way you're flying? Okay, now this is when you need to get out and get in the sun. Let's just plan this. Let's plan your meals. Let's plan your sun exposure. Let's, take a pair of these if you need them. All the sort of things. It's a tailored plan. And also, one of the things I do, and I think it's on the app, I tailor advice according to what's called your chronotype, whether you're a morning person or an evening person. And I think we all know people. I'm a night owl. I work quite productively late into the evening. Okay. And, I get an email after midnight and I'll work on that email just after midnight. That's my social media feed for the next 24 hours. I post 6 times a day, but I'm not sitting at my computer. I schedule my posts.
Okay.
And I also target my posts. So if you're getting something from me at 3 a.m, it's probably not for you. But how your chronotype, whether you're a morning person or an evening, you will jet lag differently.
That's true.
And I'll use myself as an example. My last trip was to Paris for a convention, a conference in international management. Okay. And I knew flying there would not be as bad as flying back because I'm an owl. The day seems to stretch out. And I said to the conference organizers, I will be going outside at every break. That's just, this is for me. Because most of the attendees were Europeans. There were a few Americans, and then there was a guy from New Zealand as well.
Okay.
Indian heritage living in Auckland. So he did the
Ah,
um, he flew through Doha, same as I did.
right. So I think when it comes to the Aussie and New Zealand people, they have a lot of, similarities, or let's say they twine when there is some kind of, that jet lag issue when they travel to Europe, right?
Well, now here's the thing. It really depends much more on what we call your chronotype. So because I'm a night owl, I knew I wouldn't be too bad going to Paris, but I knew coming back would be much harder.
Hmm.
And I knew what to do, and I threw everything at it. By this stage, I was halfway through my PhD, and I did all the things I could do. And I, you know, got through it, and that was great.
Okay.
So that's some people are the other way around, and you have to cater for that. But like as morning people and evening people travel differently, and
Yes.
we know that in the scientific literature, but most people don't in the business community don't realize that, and they think it's all in their imagination. They think it's so strange when I fly to Europe, I don't get jet lag. When I fly home, it's terrible. But yeah, they're two different actually. Two different. They're
Yes.
two different actually jet lags. They're actually two different diseases. If
Oh
oh,
God.
disease is not the right word, but two experiences. Um, Eastbound jet lag and westbound jet lag are actually quite different. And they did an experiment in hamsters, not in humans, in hamsters. And they injected the hamsters with the active ingredient for Viagra. And they subjected them to jet lag. It was simulated jet lag. They just turned the lights on and off early or late. And the Viagra helped, but only with the eastbound jet lag. It didn't help with westbound. And the authors predicted that. And I'm not, you know, that much into the science of it. I assume it involves nitric oxide for the eastbound, but they knew the mechanism, and they said, well, Viagra will work for this one and not for that one. And they were right. So they are quite different jet lags, different mechanisms.
That's interesting. I mean, yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, this is the first time where, I'm learning about different types of jet lag, because as far as I've just traveled very recently, to the foreign countries. The first trip that I had, I was actually based in the US when I was a kid. My father was working in the US, and,
All
that was in
right.
1998 to 2001.
Whereabouts in the US?
I was based in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay. East Coast. Yep.
Yeah. So in 2001, I went back to India, and that was my last international trip for, let's say, 2 decades. In 2020, again, I went to Singapore, and then I started understanding the concepts of jet lag. But before that, jet lag was just like a tale that I heard from all my relatives that, I'm having jet lag. I'm like, what do these people exactly mean by jet lag? I had that overconfidence that, hey, come on, I can just curb the jet lag, I can, win over it. But when I started flying, experienced it, and especially the most I experienced when I traveled to Australia. So that was like
From
something
India
great.
or from America?
From India to
Yeah.
Australia, that was huge.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine flying from New Jersey to India would have been quite a lot of jet lag as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My first overseas trip, I went around the world eastbound, which I wouldn't want to do again. I've done
Okay.
that a couple of times. But my sister was living in Los Angeles, and I was living in Canberra at the time. And I went from the middle of winter and cold, like we're
Oh.
talking snow, we ice and frost and snow on the mountains, to a
Okay.
record breaking heat wave in Los Angeles. And it was just insanely hot. And I stayed inside, which was the worst thing I could have done. And
Right.
the jet lag really hit me hard,
Oh God.
you know. So and then I kept flying east, and the jet lag kept hitting me. Um,
Oh my,
so
that's pretty much like, let's say it's house arrest, I would say. If you're indoors and experiencing the jet
indoors,
lag.
yeah. Well, the sun was just blazing hot, and I had left winter, so I was
Hmm.
really feeling it. And when I did go outside, I'd be in my sister's car. Thankfully, she drove me everywhere because
Yeah.
I did not want to drive around Los Angeles. I don't know the roads.
Right.
Everything is back hard for me because I'm used to driving on the left,
Yep.
and my sister was a bit more casual than I
All right.
am.
Okay.
She had a cup of tea in one hand, cigarette in the other, 3-year-old son running around in the back. And then we'd get to a clover leaf and she'd be like, here, hold the tea. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
holding it, clutching it for dear life. Yeah. So, no, I would not have wanted to have driven in Los Angeles at all.
I mean, that's very good that, you got that complete pre-preparation from your sister and, you managed it out a little bit well. Now
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
talk about the exact reason, now for that. I am pretty much keen to understand, like, what were the instances and what was that backstory that made you the jet lag guy? And, that, you're having that complete, complete knowledge about the jet lag, theory.
Okay. I do not profess complete knowledge. Okay. Let me just be clear.
Okay.
When you do a PhD, you learn more and more about less and less until you know absolutely everything about absolutely nothing.
Mhm.
And that's where I'm at with jet lag. So I'm
Right.
still learning things, and I'm not a sleep scientist. They teach me stuff. How I got here, it's a bit of a convoluted story. So, if you want to make a cup of tea, do that. I started off as a pharmacist and did a bit of retail pharmacy, working in chemist shops, and I hated that.
Okay.
I moved into the hospital system, and I did a lot of what they call sterile compounding, but I worked in the hospital system for about 10 years, and fairly large hospitals, typically not small ones, major teaching hospitals. And after about 10 years of that, because working in the hospital system is tiring and it can be quite thankless. And I moved into the pharmaceutical industry. I was working there and I did a number of roles in clinical research. Now, when I was in the hospital, the HIV/AIDS epidemic was at its peak. And it was quite frustrating for me as a pharmacist. There was nothing I could give them. At that stage, there weren't any drugs. And then they developed the first one, which was a drug called AZT, which was horrible and isn't
Okay.
used now. It was the first of better and better drugs.
Mhm.
And I was passionate about research. So I moved into the pharmaceutical industry, working in research. I
Mhm.
worked in the Viagra clinical trials, which is not as glamorous as it sounds. I can assure you. It was a lot of what's the word? A lot of really dull work behind the scenes. You're checking that the data's okay, and you're counting the number of bottles, and you're changing the expiry date because you get new expiry date information. So you change the expiry date of your stock, and counting stock and tracking them in spreadsheets, all that sort of thing. So wasn't exciting work. And I've got a job. My previous company was being taken over, and I knew I wasn't going to have a job in the new company because they already
Yeah.
had someone doing my job in the other company. They didn't need me as well.
Mhm.
So I just quickly got a job. No expectation of travel from me. No expectation of travel from the job. So there was no conversation about travel. And then a few weeks later, we're having difficulty with our database. And I'm saying, hey, our boss was in the US, and he's going to have difficulty training the staff. And the head boss said, well, you better do it, Stephen. So a couple of weeks later, I was flying to North Carolina to train staff in this database, and then that was it. I was traveling all over the world. So I traveled to America for a week, 2 days on the West Coast, 2 days on the East Coast, a day in the middle flying across.
Right.
Because if you fly from the West Coast to the East Coast, you lose 3 hours on top
Yep.
of your 2 flights. So that's your day gone. I'd leave San Francisco quite early, and I'd get into North Carolina late afternoon,
Okay.
because losing the 3 hours in
Yeah.
time zone differences, that took a chunk. I'm very grateful that they didn't make me do an overnight flight. Um, and my craziest trip was to fly to Buenos Aires in Argentina for 3 days.
Mhm.
And from Australia, that's a long way. That's 4 flights. It's 24 hours of solo traveling. It's 11 time zones.
Okay.
Because South America is a lot further east than North America. So and my first day I was training the staff and we had a lunch break. And they said, well, look, we can drive you to the restaurant or we could walk. It's only a kilometre away. I said, oh, no, let's walk. It'll be lovely. I'll get to see, the streets of Buenos Aires, which would be nice. So I walked. And that was the best thing I could have done because it reset my body clock for jet lag. It was absolutely the best thing I could have done. So that was great. And I didn't know then what I know now. And I did an executive MBA, graduated, got fine. Then I thought I'll do a PhD, and I was looking at what I was going to do, and I kept suggesting things, and my supervisors and my the research methods teacher all hated them. And I said, I could talk about, travel and jet lag because I used to do that all the time. And they all said, yes, absolutely. This is what you should talk about. So I've been talking about it ever since.
Okay.
So it's an international management PhD, but spliced together with biology, specifically chronobiology.
Biology. Okay. I mean, what
Because
aspect
jet
of
lag is a biological thing. I need to talk about circadian rhythm and melatonin and the brain, all of the factors, the receptors in the eye, all that biological stuff. Jet lag is a biological phenomenon. But I'm taking that biological phenomenon and applying it to the business, the management perspective. So that makes me a little different. Most of the people in the jet lag space are sleep scientists. They've got PhDs in, biology, circadian rhythm studies, all that sort of thing, which is great and valid. I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle. I talk about organizational psychology as well, which, management and performance.
I mean, Stephen, I totally, I just love the way, you're just talking about the connection between the jet lag and the chronic biology. Now, I mean, I'm pretty keen to, ask you this, like since childhood, I have this question. So probably this is like a light bulb moment for me, to ask you this question. So, I mean, on the globe, I always see that, in the Asian continent, in Europe, they appear very far, but Asia and Australia, they appear very close, and so does Australia and South America. But when we travel, the distance is too much. So why is that like that? And what's the time zone case for it?
Okay. North-south isn't a factor. East-west is in terms of jet lag because, and I use the example now, I know Russia's not a great place to travel to right at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us, but let's just imagine before all this happened, you were in, say, Sydney or Melbourne, and you were going to fly to Vladivostok to get on the Trans-Siberian to take the train for a week across to Moscow. I think it's 6 days on the train. So let's say you catch the flight to Tokyo. It's an overnight flight to Tokyo, 10 hours. Then you get up to Tokyo, clear customs. Then you take a train and another train to the town where there's a ferry. And then you take the ferry when it ran across from, I can't remember the name of the port town, across to Vladivostok. So let's say you do. When you get to Vladivostok and you check in your hotel, you'll be absolutely exhausted from all that travel. Plane, 2 trains, ferry, taxi, whatever. But you will not be jet lagged because the time zone has not changed and your body clock hasn't changed. The sun is still, I mean, depending on winter or summer, but the sun is still rising and setting at similar times. There's no jet lag. Your body clock's not thrown off by this. You're just tired. Now, for example, let's say that they have these supersonic rockets and they fly from Sydney or Melbourne to London in 3 hours, 2 hours. That's a crazy talk, but that's what they're talking at the moment now.
Yep.
Right. Australia to London in 3 hours by a rocket. And, let's say you got the rocket, apart from the G forces, which would be a bit uncomfortable, But, you sit down for 2 hours, they might even serve you a nice meal and a cup of tea, but you're fine. You won't be exhausted from the travel, but you will absolutely be jet lagged because your body clock is now in a completely different time, almost the
Exactly.
opposite time,
Yeah.
and it will throw you. The faster you go, the worse the jet lag is. Now, talking about Asia, Australia, if you fly from Australia to, say, China or Japan, you won't get jet lag. China and Singapore are in the same time zone as Perth. Sydney and Melbourne are 2 hours ahead, 3 hours at the moment with daylight saving, an hour, 2 hours at the moment ahead of Japan. So there's no jet lag there. But India, yeah, you'll get more jet lag. And the further west in Asia you go, if you went to, Iran or Saudi Arabia, you'd certainly have jet lag.
Exactly.
South America, there's no north-south between Australia and South America, really. It's not substantial. But the east-west, there's a lot of it.
Okay.
And Buenos Aires is a good... It's 13 hours behind, which comes to 11 hours time zone difference. You don't count the international date line.
So you were just telling me that, you had 4 flights. So where was the flight from? Was it from Sydney to Auckland and Auckland to Hawaii and from the US, something like that?
Melbourne to Sydney to Auckland to Santiago to Buenos Aires.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and when you fly Auckland, Santiago, it's a long flight and there's nowhere. There is nothing close to you. You are just off the coast of Antarctica.
Okay.
If anything had happened to the plane, they would never find the bodies. They would never find the wreckage. They just have a memorial service with a few flowers because you just can't be found. You're in the far South Pacific Ocean. You would not survive a plane crash there. You would not survive that. It would take too long to be rescued.
And that's pretty scary to hear that, Stephen, to be honest.
Yeah, but look, the pilots have all been in the Chilean Air Force, so they're very good pilots. So that's and the other thing I remember flying there at night, the stars look amazing because there is no light except from the plane because there's absolutely nothing there. Because the Great Circle route, it's not straight across on the map, it's down because that's the Great Circle.
Right.
So you're not that far from Antarctica.
Okay. Wow, that's a pretty good news. I mean, piece of good information, or let's say trivia for me. Suppose if I have ever plans of traveling to South America from Australia in the future, let's see how that works out.
It's fine. It's safe because, like I said, they're all very good pilots. But I think Qantas now has a direct flight to Santiago from Sydney. And you will be flying very close to Antarctica, and there is nothing to see out the window. There is nothing. There's just ocean and stars, maybe pieces of ice if you're lucky.
In between here and there.
Yeah, but there's nothing there.
Right. That's pretty interesting. Now, I mean, out of all the travel journeys, I'll just sum it up like this. Are there any interesting anecdotes, Stephen, would you like to, talk about in this podcast session that you've experienced till now?
In terms of
anything, with respect to your travel, with respect to the jet lag diaries, anything else?
I think a funny thing I was flying across the Atlantic, and eastbound Atlantic, in my opinion, is one of the worst flights you can fly because in terms of jet lag, because the day seems to shrink. It's eastbound, that's harder. And also, if it's summertime in the Northern Hemisphere, you don't get a lot of night because you fly very close to the Arctic Circle. So it's only, I think it's only something like 3 hours or 5 between Newfoundland in Canada and Ireland. It's not long. There's not many hours between Newfoundland and Ireland. So there's always something out the window, and then you get up and you might see the Northern Lights if you're very lucky, but you don't get a good night's sleep.
That's
So,
nice. I mean,
but while I was waiting for my plane, I was at Newark in New Jersey,
yes.
Newark International. And so I'm queuing in my flight for London, and I would get this group of Americans come out, and you know how you have the velvet ropes that you queue up? Well, these people treated them like commando ropes, went over and under and over and under and over and under with their luggage.
Yeah.
And they were real hard to get in here. I said, oh, I just went to the enter here sign and zigzagged. Oh, it's too hard for us. I thought, okay. And then a few minutes later, is this the flight for Jacksonville? No, this is not the flight for Jacksonville. No, this is the flight to London. Big sign up the front, international departures, London, UK. Jacksonville's at the domestic, And I said, no, you go down there to the domestic to get the flight for Jacksonville. These people had just queued up on the first flight they saw.
Oh.
And so, okay. And they went out through the ropes and climbed over and under them again. Like it was just the strangest thing I have seen. And I don't know that Jacksonville's going to know what hit it.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, yeah, sometimes, these kind of, let's say these troll faux pas really happen. Sometimes when you're in a hurry, or let's say you're too much curious that, when is your next flight? Such kind of bloopers do happen.
I have swapped places with someone who was looking anxious. She was behind me, a few places behind me. And she's like, going to one for me. Excuse me, lady in the blue dress. Are you in a rush? Because I'll swap. And she was very grateful, I think. You go ahead, because she was quite anxious. I'm one of those people who turns up hours ahead of schedule at the airport. I just I do not want to run for a plane. I do not. I like to get on nicely, and I generally don't run for planes.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty nice. Now, we're just talking about planes and all of that. Like in train, did you experience the jet lag? Did you ever happen to, have that chance of, traveling in the train across Europe? Because as I understand, EU is completely connected with trains and everything. So did you have those experiences?
I have traveled by train in Europe quite a bit, but there's no such thing as train lag.
Okay.
I travel by train. I think the longest trip I did was Paris to Vienna in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was straight east, but I was still in the same time zone.
Yep.
The France and the UK are on different time zones. They shouldn't be. They should be on the same time zone, but that's a whole nother conversation. But you're not going to get jet lag traveling from France to the UK. You can't get jet lag on a train. Even if I took the Trans-Siberian, which is a long way east, you're just going to get up a little earlier or a little later each day, and you won't really notice much in the way of jet lag.
Okay.
You'll just get little, your iPhone will change the time automatically and okay, another hour. It's not going to be a big deal.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there is no such thing as train lag. You can travel, even the Shinkansen in Japan, you will not get jet lag, I promise.
Wow. So did you have a chance of, traveling in Shinkansen? Because Shinkansen is one thing that is, there in my bucket list for a long time.
I have not yet been to Japan. That is on my bucket list.
Okay.
Take the Shinkansen. When I was in Paris, I was staying near Gare de Lyon, which is they've got about a dozen railway stations that are terminals in Paris, and Gare de Lyon takes you to Lyon and Geneva and a few other places in the southeast of France. And Geneva and I think Lyon have a TGV bullet train, like similar to the Shinkansen.
Yes. Yeah.
You might even be a little faster. So, and you can travel very quickly on some of those lines because they've built these new lines to have fewer curves. And they keep talking about having very fast trains in Australia, but they need to rebuild the lines because the lines were laid in the 19th century and they wind their way through the mountains very slowly. There's even a couple of spirals. So yeah.
That's pretty much interesting, Stephen. Now, Stephen, all this while, we were just talking about jet lag, but the main thing, where we actually caught up in the first place and where I actually got to know you. So, in that place, I'm pretty much keen to ask you, like, what has been your inspiration and drive to, get involved into the Toastmasters event?
What is getting involved in Toastmasters? My goal, my passion is jet lag isn't just an inconvenience and it affects performance. It's dangerous. It's physically dangerous. Every day or two on my desk, something lands about the latest terrible thing associated with circadian disruption. We know that it's associated with heart attacks, strokes, type 2 diabetes, addiction. These are all increased in business travelers.
Yeah.
And now we're finding potentially increased risk in cancers. This is in mice, so it may not apply to humans. So I'm passionate about, and we know how to fix jet lag. So I'm passionate about circadian rhythm alignment and people being well, supporting their relationships, supporting their performance. And my goal is to do a TED Talk. The only way I'm going to do a TED Talk is if I get very good at talking.
Yes.
It's the only way I'm ever going to do that. And so to do I've joined Toastmasters and I've entered a competition. And this is so that it pushes me a bit. So earlier in the week, I had a speech and I wasn't allocated, and they said, and the Toastmaster said, "Hey, I've got 2 vacancies." Yep, I'll do that. Better write a speech. So learn from that. Have a speech in your pocket ready to go. That's what I've done. So I'm passionate about the subject. It's not something about me being famous, but I've actually written the TED Talk. A friend of mine said, "Well, if you're going to do a TED Talk, you better write the TED Talk." Oh, good call.
Yep.
So I've written the TED Talk. That's what I do. And I met the people at TEDx. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the last TEDx. I had a clash. I would like to go to, TEDx in Melbourne. I know a couple of people there, but it's my passion is to do a TED Talk to sort of warn business culture to take jet lag and business travel seriously, as seriously as sports teams do.
Yeah.
That's my passion in this.
That's a pretty good example. Now, talking about sports people, like in your one-to-one consulting, did you ever get cases, where a sports person actually came to you and, asked you for help from jet lag?
I haven't as yet. I have had some contact with sports organizations, but they tend to have team doctors.
Okay.
And those team doctors have got it pretty well sorted. And I don't have a medical degree. They're looking so much more at the physical well-being. So they'll do all sorts of blood tests and stress tests and all sorts of things that you wouldn't do with a business traveler. It is different. They're looking at, oxygen levels and lactic acid levels, all of these sorts of things, which make sense to look at for an athlete, don't make sense to look at for a business traveler. So it's fairly niche. And certainly, we can take lessons from sport, and I do think some sport teams handle it better than others. And I'm following at the moment American football.
NFL.
Because the National Football League is pushing people to play overseas, teams to play overseas. So we just had the Miami Dolphins defeat the Washington Commanders in Madrid. Every August, but not for the next couple of years, sadly, we have Iowa State versus Kansas State. This is college football, playing in Dublin, sponsored by Aer Lingus. And the game is nicknamed Pharmageddon. because both Farmageddon, because both the teams come from farming communities, and it's this big clash of farming communities. And I thought that was a funny title, so I quite like Farmageddon. And we're starting to see that in Australia as well. We had rugby league teams. I think it was Cronulla Sharks and Penrith Panthers playing in Las Vegas. Is there much of a rugby league audience in Las Vegas? I don't know. But the sports franchises are looking to expand their markets. They've saturated their home countries and they're looking at getting outside. We have soccer, or football, if you're a purist, called the world game, and that they are pretty much global. I don't think Australia's particularly good at soccer. I don't know that India is.
They're fine. India is not at all in the consideration. I think that's a separate topic for the other day.
I think. Well, I don't think Australia's any better. So we have a few passionate soccer supporters, but we are not Argentina or Brazil in terms of soccer. We are not
at all.
No.
Not at all.
And I think I think we could not go up against those countries. We could not go up against Germany or any of that.
That's sort of impossible because they're all like World Cup winning nations and they have a very good structure. And the best part about all these football teams, since I'm a complete football fan, I totally understand that, they have this exposure of playing in all these European leagues, playing for all these high class European teams.
It's the culture. It's the culture. What the country supports and what the country supports less. In Australia, swimming is really supported, and the Australian Olympic swimming team, they're the wealthiest woman in the country, person in the country, Gina Reinhart, financially supports the swimming team. People are passionate about swimming here. So it's really what the country support. We're less passionate about soccer, generally speaking.
Yes.
That's not right or wrong. That's just the cultural. If I think you went to Argentina, it'd be the other way around. I don't know that the Argentinians are particularly passionate about swimming, but they love soccer. So
they're mad about soccer.
Yeah. So
and in India, the case is people are mad about cricket. They, everyone, if you just come to India and you see every lane, people play cricket, and it's like a religion here. I don't know. It's just become.
Is it more so than here? More so than here?
I mean, yes, because in Australia, I see there is a division of opinion. People like NRL, people like AFL, and people like cricket. But in India, there's just one sport, and that's cricket. So the distribution works like that.
Right, because I am a rugby league kind of guy, and that's played in the east coast of Australia, France, patches of the UK, and that's about it, really.
Yes.
Oh, and Fiji. Fiji's big on it as well.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. That's nice. Now, I'll just, before we actually, conclude our podcast session and, head for the rapid fire round, I am pretty much keen to ask you this particular question, Stephen, like from my part of the world, or let's say from India, did anyone, approach you based on a one-to-one consulting kind of a thing? And, ask like, how do I curb the jet lag? Anyone from India approached you?
Not as yet. Although having said that, now these retimer glasses, these are, like I said, they're an Australian invention. They're manufactured in Australia, but the marketing is done through India.
Oh, okay.
So, hello to the retimer marketing team at Motherson in India. So I deal with them. I know them quite well. They know me. Marketing the glasses. So they're my chief Indian contacts. And often, like if I post and I talk about the retimer glasses,
right,
you can do an analysis based on location. And I've had Indian cities dominate. It'll be Indian cities and Adelaide, which is where they're manufactured. And I know if I know that, I know it's Retimer and Motherson looking at it. But yeah.
Right. So which Indian cities
do they belong to? It's one of those weird things with LinkedIn. You can go viral in weird places.
Yes.
Because we know the meeting coming up in Antalya in Turkey. And it's like, I know where that is because I went viral in Antalya.
Yeah,
There's an
yeah.
airline that's run out of an Antalya. So it's the third city in Turkey.
Yep,
And
very much.
I posted about this airline and they loved it.
Very interesting. Yeah. That's good to know. Stephen, now since you just told me that you had the marketing team. So which city is that based
No,
out of India?
I don't have a marketing team. The glasses have. I'm an affiliate seller, so I don't have
Okay.
personally a marketing team. It's the marketing team for the retimers.
Okay. So do they come from the likes of Mumbai, Delhi, the capital city of India? Something like that?
I would have to. I don't know if they're all in the same city, to be truthful. So
Okay, okay. No worries, no worries. All right, Stephen. So, now before we actually, conclude our podcast session, like on a complete note, let's take a lighter route in the form of a rapid fire round. I mean, all this while,
okay,
as far as I understand, I was completely bombarding you with questions based on your travel diaries, based on jet lag, about your journey, how you became the jet lag guy. But now I'll just take a pretty lighter route, in the form of your likes and interests. Something which is, completely, let's say not linked with your career, but something which is linked with your, let's say likes and interests. So
okay.
so are you ready with the first question of the rapid fire round,
I'm ready.
Stephen? Perfect. All right. So, Stephen, the first question to you, like, what is your favorite sports team?
That's asking me my religion.
Okay.
And I did mention I'm a rugby league kind of guy. And
Yeah.
my home team is the Parramatta Eels.
Parramatta Eels. Okay.
I grew up near there. And as a kid, I'd go and watch the old Cumberland Oval. So the Parramatta Eels would have to be it.
Fantastic. Trust me, when I came for the first Toastmasters event, that was the place where actually I heard from you. I mean, we didn't even meet then. I mean, we didn't, spoke that time. The second event I came and then, we just, had a conversation. But in the first event when I came to know from your end that, you're from Sydney and you love, the National Rugby League over AFL. So I was like, okay, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, no, rugby league. I'm a rugby league kind of. Yeah, I'm in Melbourne now, and I didn't grow up playing Australian rules, and
Okay.
my father did. My father's from Perth, but it didn't make sense to me, and I
Yeah.
you know, not much. Not that I'm a rugby league player at all, by the way. I never was.
Yeah. I totally get that everyone has their opinion. And yes, of course, I mean, I like Australian rules football, though my culture has nothing to do with Australian rules football, but still, I followed it and I like a particular team. I like the Richmond Tigers.
Right. Okay.
That's my favorite team. And the best part is I even support the Sydney Swans of Sydney.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So if I would just give you a chance to pick the best player of the Parramatta Eels, who would that be? And who do you
No,
like the
I'm
most?
touching that one. I actually support two teams. I
Okay.
support the Parramatta and whoever is playing against Manly.
Manly. Okay.
Playing against. There's a rivalry between the two teams, Parramatta and Manly. So that's what. So
Okay.
whoever's
I
playing
get the
against
point.
Manly.
Okay. So who has to be the best player that you would have to pick from both the teams?
No, I'm gonna. I will kick a hornet's nest if I touch that one. So I'm going to pass. I'll say,
Okay, fine.
why didn't you say this one?
No
I'm gonna.
problem. No worries, no worries. All right. So, Stephen, since I come from India and I'm a person of the Indian heritage, so I'll be very keen to ask you this question. Like, what is your favorite Indian food that you would like to always have?
Oh, I do like me a good papadam. I know that's a
Yeah.
terrible answer, but I just love them. I love the texture. I love the mouthfeel. I know, I do like a good curry, and I do like samosas, and I do like um, the what's the chicken dish with the marinade? What's the
Butter chicken.
butter chicken? No, there's another one. It's
Chicken
rubbed
tikka
with
masala.
spices. Yeah, I love that. But gosh, I love me a papa. If I get an Indian takeaway, my favorite dish is the papadums, which I eat at the beginning. That's the best bit for me. You
Right,
know,
even, trust me,
if I
there's a
if
there's a
I
training
could eat
element
a
here.
meal entirely of papadums, I would.
Oh, really?
I love the
That was me a lot of time.
crispy. I also love like crispy bacon and pork crackling. So I just like crisp things.
Crisp, right? Even I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan of the papad, yeah, since you call it as papadum, and in my culture we call it as papad. So I love
yeah,
papads, and I
yeah.
like different types of papads. I just grab when I go. It's pretty much, it's very. I don't say, I don't know what's the nutritional element associated with it, but it's, all about pleasure food. So that's
Yeah,
part of it.
look, and yeah, it is a pleasure food. It's not something you could eat too much of because it's basically carbs and fat because it's deep
Yes.
fried. I don't know
Yep.
how they would go in an air fryer. I suspect not, but I do like them.
That's pretty good. That's a very good option. Now, if I have to, give you two options from here, like which one would that be? Would you prefer the beaches or would you prefer the mountains?
Beaches. I was just thinking about this the other day. I have friends who live in the Blue Mountains near Sydney. They would love me to move there. I'm like, no, I'm a beach guy. And it's interesting. My family, all my siblings, we are all close to the beach.
Okay.
So I'm close to the beach. All of my family, we're all close to the beach. I'm definitely beaches over mountains. I just love the sea, love the sand, the waves. I love it all. I mean, mountains are pretty too, but beaches have got it for me.
That's nice. That's nice. So, what's your favorite beach in any particular beach that you like in Australia?
Hmm. 7 Mile Beach, or some of the ones in Jarvis Bay. They're south of Sydney, about 200 k south of Sydney. A bit less than that, 160. And Jarvis Bay's got the whitest sand in the world, apparently. 7 Mile Beach is literally 7 miles of beach, and
Mhm.
there's nothing on there. There's like a
No.
small town at either end and just wilderness in the middle. It's just lovely.
Nice. That's an interesting option. Now, I'll give you four options now to select your best film franchise, and I'll just start that. So, the first one happens to be the James Bond franchise, the next one, the Marvel franchise, the Indiana Jones, and then the Star Wars franchise. So, which one would you pick from the four of
So
these?
which one? James Bond?
James
What was it?
Bond, James Bond, the Marvel franchise, Indiana Jones, Star Wars,
Marvel, Indiana Jones,
and the Star Wars.
and the what?
Star Wars, Star Wars.
The Star Wars.
Yeah,
Can I go with the Matrix trilogy?
yeah. Okay.
And the Matrix trilogy had the fourth one released during, the end of the pandemic.
Okay.
Um, Look, Bond is a bit patchy. There were some. I think the later ones are better than the early ones. I think the early ones were
Yes.
silly. I think the later ones are better.
Okay.
And I think the early ones are a product of their time. Yeah, you had a Bond girl called Pussy Galore. Really? It was all nudge, nudge, wink, wink jokes. It's like, we're a bit past that now. And it's a product of the times. But the
Yep.
later Bond movies are better. They're a bit more complex. They're more
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. I think Daniel Craig was a fantastic Bond.
Mhm.
He got criticized, like, how can you have a blonde Bond?
Yeah.
Because all of the other Bonds had dark hair, fair skin,
Yes, yes, yes. That's right.
But I think the Bond franchise has improved substantially. And the other tricky thing with the Bond franchise is they've run out of books because they were all originally based on Ian Fleming's books. Well, Ian Fleming's
Yep.
dead, long dead. He wrote a certain number of books. They've all turned into Bond movies. Now what do? We have to write new material. And I think the new material is better. So
Mm.
I like the new James Bond better than like the old James Bond. And
Okay.
I'm not of the Sean Connery was the greatest Bond ever. Sean Connery was great, but I mean,
I know.
I think Daniel Craig was better. it was a bit more complex.
I know. Everyone has their own opinion, but I'm a huge fan of Sean Connery and the previous Bonds more than
Look, I
the
like
present ones.
look, Sean Connery was great, but I just think the newer Bonds have just got that bit more.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That gives me an explanation on that. Now, out of all the travel diaries, Stephen, that you had, which travel did you enjoy the most? You traveled across the world. So which one did
No,
you like the
can't
most?
answer that. I can only give you a short list
Okay.
because Buenos Aires was work. Um, I love traveling to Europe. I've traveled to Europe a few times. I love Paris. I love Copenhagen. I love Boston.
Okay.
I went to New York, but I just found Boston felt more comfortable. And I
Okay.
think Boston reminded me in a lot of Sydney, which is my hometown. You've got the ocean to the east, you've got the harbour to the north with the big bridge. The streets are narrow and crooked. They get more and more narrow and crooked the closer you get to the city centre. It's not the grid like most American cities or Melbourne or Adelaide are laid out on. So, yeah, Copenhagen, Paris, Boston, they're favourite places I've been to.
Hmm.
I do like San Francisco, but I went there for work.
Okay.
Um, so where else? I don't like humidity. It's something I discovered traveling overland through Vietnam and Cambodia. I just don't like humidity.
Humidity. Okay.
And if I move back to Sydney, that's one thing that's waiting for me there is the humid. I remember it and I hated it. So
Right. If you come to Hyderabad, the way place where I'm based in, you'll find a lot of similarities between Sydney weather and Hyderabad's weather, because both
all
of them
right.
are not that cold. And yeah, you should definitely fly to Hyderabad someday.
Okay. Well, I know that Sydney has a lot of people who've moved from Hong Kong because
Yeah,
again, it's quite similar. It's the people in Hong Kong found Sydney quite comfortable.
yeah,
They were used to not quite tropical, but humid, and there's a big harbour, and it was all very familiar for them.
yes, very true, very true. That's right.
Okay, so
So
Hyderabad. Okay, I've heard there's like a metro there now or something. So
yes, there is a huge metro, and that's like a long distance metro. I think that connects, I think, 1 hour of distance or 1.5 hour, and they're even having plans of laying out more metros in Hyderabad. So which is
yeah.
like a good news for the people based here.
Well, Sydney has built its first metro as opposed to a train. It's not it's driverless trains. They turn up every 4 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's wonderful. It's mostly underground, so you go underneath the harbour. You don't go over the harbour bridge.
Yes.
Um, they converted one railway line to metro. They're converting another. Uh,
Yep. Different
so,
advancements. That's nice. That's pretty interesting to know, Stephen. Now, Stephen, before having more last two questions of the rapid fire round to you. So, the next question is like, what was the last movie that you've watched?
I'm halfway through watching The Hunger Games,
The Hunger Games, okay.
which I know is a few years old, but I love it. To quote the
Okay.
movie.
Right,
So
right.
that's where I'm at. I've got to actually sit down, put the video on, and the other one, Westworld, which I've just
The
got to sit down.
Westworld.
I've got these two. I might do that this weekend. But just watch them. Sit down and watch them.
Nice. That's a pretty good choice. And the final question to you, Stephen. Now, what was the last song that you've heard from your playlist?
Well, I can help you with this one. I'm currently counting down. This is November, and November is Australian Music Month. So I'm
Uh-huh.
counting down the top 10 Australian songs. And I got a
Okay.
bit rubbery with the definition. I decided to include Nutbush City Limits as an Australian song because we're kind of, even though I and Tina Turner were American, the song is about Tennessee. Tina Turner's from Tennessee, but we
Yeah.
kind of took that song over, made it our own, made a special dance to it, all that sort of thing.
Okay.
And the song that I've just released a few hours ago, number 2, is a song called, and I'm not making this up, it's a song called Jet Lag.
Jet lag, okay.
The band is Canadian. The band is Simple Plan, but they got Vanessa Amorosi, who's Australian, as a lead singer, as a guest to sing it. So that one. So that is my most recent song on my playlist. The song is called Jet Lag by Simple Plan featuring Vanessa Amorosi. And I've seen Vanessa Amorosi perform live in concert, but not that song.
I've actually heard the song from Simple Plan, and I really love that song, the Jet Lag song. It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, but yeah, check it out. It's an absolute banger. I was doing some research because I wanted a jet lag theme and finding songs, and then this one turned up. I hadn't heard it. Like, this is absolutely fantastic. Okay, this is going in the top 10. And it made it to number 2. So
fantastic. So, I mean, in your top 10, do you have this song, Stephen? And I know this is like an unofficial anthem of Australia, which is Down Under. There's a song called Down Under.
Yeah. I know the song you mean, Men at Work.
Yes,
yes. Not a fan of that song. Men at Work have done some work. They've done some really good work. I don't think that's their best song. I know it's their most popular. I know it's kind of iconic, but I think that's not their best. That's they've done, and I'm trying to remember the name of the song. I can't that Men at Work did that I really like, but that ain't it. But that one, it's all the cliches.
I know.
Yeah. It's like, I don't eat Vegemite every day, so I don't think it's a great represent. And there was another band at the time called Ice House. They heard the song. They were appalled by the song. They wanted something they thought was more Australian, and they wrote Great Southern Land, which I think is
Great Southern Land.
Absolute their best. And the other song that I would prefer to represent Australia is a band called Ganga Jang.
Okay.
And they did a song called Sounds of Then. And it's a particular part of this. It's the East Coast, where it's humid. And they talk about sounds of thunder cracking over cane fields, which is coastal Queensland and far north New South Wales. And my sister lives near that, so I'm very familiar with the sounds of thunder cracking over cane fields. I'm familiar with that. And that to me represents Australia. That those two songs, Sounds of Then and Great Southern Land, I think are
the Great Southern Land.
Better ambassadors for Australia than Down Under.
Down Under, okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good choice.
All
right.
Where women blow and men chunder. I mean, really? No. Singing a song about vomit? No.
I know. I mean, when I heard the lyrics, I'm like, wow, the lyrics is too extreme. But I mean, it's really good to hear, though.
It's a bit of an earworm, but yeah, I think there are better songs.
Yep, truly. Yeah. All right, Stephen. So finally, thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedule and being part of this podcast collaboration of mine. I just loved everything that we talked about, especially about jet lag and a lot of things about the travel journeys, the travel diaries, and your experiences. They really blew me off, and actually they gave me a blueprint, or let's say a complete an itinerary, like how I need to plan out when I go for my next overseas trip. So that was really lovely. And I just love the way, you came across with, you started your initiative, the Jet Lag Guys. So that was really lovely and remarkable. And I'm pretty sure our listeners are going to relate to this, because jet lag is something that's very much relatable to everyone and every person or every walk of life. Yeah. So, and it was really a lovely conversation with you, Stephen. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks very much.
All right, listeners. On this note, this is your host Akhil Navluri signing off. We would be back with another podcast episode with another eminent industry leader of different spaces very soon. Till then, keep listening. Goodbye. Stay tuned. Take care. Goodbye and au revoir. Thank you.